Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia from Berry Cherry Cakes, and in this course I'm going to teach you the basics of sugar cookie decorating from my no chill, no spread sugar cookie dough and what is the right dough for you. I'm also going to go over royal icing, the different consistencies, and how to make the perfect royal icing. We're also going to discuss ways to incorporate sugar cookies if it's your first time making them to your business, and I'm also going to go over a few of the items that I love when I started cookie decorating, or things that I love to incorporate into my packaging, and different items that have helped me in my cookie decorating journey. So let's begin. We are going to start by making a no chill, no spread cookie dough. This is my personal recipe, and one of the things that happened to me when I first started sugar cookie decorating is I found a lot of recipes online, but a lot of them weren't for me. So this specific recipe is a recipe that helped to save me time, because a lot of the recipes that you will find out there require refrigeration or freezing before baking your cookies. This one doesn't, so let's get started by preheating our oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. A very important thing to remember when making your sugar cookie dough is that your butter is at room temperature. In the case that your butter is not at room temperature, you can put your butter in the microwave, but no longer than 5 to 6 seconds, because we want our butter to be soft to the touch, just like you see here. We also don't want it to be too soft but too cold. To get started, we are going to add the paddle attachment to our mixer. You can also do this recipe with a hand mixer. It's just going to be a little bit harder. Now, the first ingredient that we want to make sure to always take out when preparing our sugar cookie dough is our butter. I usually take out my butter 30 to 40 minutes before I start putting together my recipe. So usually it's the first ingredient that I take out. We are going to cream 2 sticks of butter using our paddle attachment. And we're also going to add in 1 1/4 cups of granulated sugar, and we're going to mix this until they both become fluffy. After a few minutes, your mixture should be fluffy. Next, we're going to add in 1 cold egg, and this is going to help balance the room temperature of the butter so that it brings back the temperature of that butter and our cookies are not too soft when we go to roll them out. We're also going to add in the extracts, and I'm adding in 1 tablespoon of vanilla and half a teaspoon of almond extract. And we're going to mix these ingredients until they incorporate again. During this process, always remember to scrape the sides of your bowl just to make sure that all of the butter and all of the ingredients that we are adding on are able to incorporate before you move on to the final mixing with the flour. After these ingredients have incorporated, we're going to stop our mixer and once again scrape our bowl so we can get ready for the next part. Now we are going to measure out 3½ cups of flour. When you're measuring out your dry ingredients, especially your flour, be sure to use a smaller scoop and scoop into the bigger cup. That way you are not getting more flour than you need, because this will affect the texture of your cookies. Now I'm also going to add in the rest of the dry ingredients into my flour, and I'm adding in 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. I'm going to give these a light whisk just to incorporate all of these dry ingredients before we add this in to our butter and sugar mixture. Now I'm going to scoop in my flour a little bit at a time, and we're going to continue mixing in between each time we scoop in some more flour. Make sure that before you add in more flour, that the one that you added in has already mixed in with the rest of the ingredients. Make sure to be patient with your dough. You are going to see that it goes through stages. So at first it's going to seem like it's coming together, and then once you finish adding in all of the flour, you're going to think that you did everything wrong. It's going to look sandy and it's going to start looking like it's not coming together. Make sure not to stop there. Since this is a no spread, no chill cookie dough, we are using less butter and less baking powder than other recipes, as well as less eggs. So this means that the mixture that we made in the beginning has to be able to have time to incorporate to the flour. So make sure to be patient. It's been quite a few minutes and my dough is now ready. And as you can see, it's starting to come apart from the bowl, and that's the indication that your dough is ready for the next step. Now that our cookie dough is ready, this is the consistency that you should have. Your cookie dough should have come together and it's not sticking to the bowl, but it's still soft to the touch. To roll out my dough, I like to use a silicone non-stick mat from Dough Easy, but you can also use parchment paper. And I always like to make sure that I dust or sprinkle my surface, even if it's a non-stick surface, with a little bit of powdered sugar. Now I'm going to take half of my dough and I'm going to simply knead it, and then I'm going to just simply form it a little bit of a square so that when we go to roll it, we have more working space when cutting out our cookies. In case that you don't have this silicone mat, or if you don't have access to it, I do recommend using the Home Depot painter's rods, the ones that are long, the ruler like. You can get them for free at Home Depot. Just ask them to give you a few of them and they work perfect instead of these. This is a 1/4 inch thickness, just in case if you are curious. Anytime that I'm using cutters, whether they're metal or plastic, I like to always dip my cutter into a little bit of powdered sugar before cutting out my cookie. Doing this is going to help to prevent any sticking, especially on smaller cutters that have small, delicate points. When I am ready to transfer over my cutout cookies to my baking pan, what I like to do first is take a small spatula and then just dip it into some powdered sugar and start taking away the excess first before I move any of the shapes. Once I've removed as much as the excess as possible, I'm going to dip my spatula in powdered sugar again, just to help me coat my spatula so that I can be able to lift off my shapes without misshaping them. So I'm going to take my spatula and slowly wiggle it under my shape before picking it up. And I'm going to pick it up with my hands and transfer it over to my baking sheet. If at this point you still feel like your dough is too soft and you're not able to pick up the shapes without misshaping them, What I do recommend is adding in an additional 1/4 cup of flour and kneading it by hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add half of that, and I'm going to simply knead in this extra flour by hand and feel out the dough to see if that's all that I need. Usually adding in more flour or less flour will depend on how humid it is where you live, the temperature of your home, and also the temperature of your ingredients. So anytime that you feel that a recipe or this recipe is too soft, especially in cookies, you can go ahead and add in about 1/8 of a cup to 1/4 of a cup of flour without altering the result too much. Now that you've mastered the sugar cookie dough recipe, you are ready to move on to the next step, which is royal icing and decorating your cookies.